guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be showing how I do my 3D flowers. About a month ago I did get a comment on one of my shorts of me doing 3D flowers. I'm asking me to basically give a tutorial because they have been practicing them for a while and haven't quite gotten it down yet. So I thought I'd take today to go ahead and do that for you guys. So I'm just gonna go ahead and get right into it. First thing though, I am gonna of course be using these swatch sticks to do the 3D flowers on, but I think I'm gonna go ahead and paint them first, just so that you guys can get a better picture, or like a, you know, a solid background so you can see what I'm actually doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and paint them really quickly and then I'll be right back. So just a second. Okay guys, so I went ahead and polished my 3 swatch sticks. As you can see, I did black, white, and then a nude color. So what I'm going to actually be using today to do my 3D flowers, I am going to be using this nail art brush. It's a 3D Kolinsky number 4. I do believe I actually got this off of Amazon. I'm going to see if I can find the link, and I will leave it down in the description if I can find it. But usually they're pretty easy to find on Amazon. If you just type in 3D nail art brush, more than likely you're going to be able to find this. And once again, this is a number 4. This is my go-to. It's pretty much kind of like the only size brush that I do use for my flowers. But yes, so I'm going to be using this. Of course, a little bit of monomer, and then I think I'm just going to pick random acrylic colors to make this out of. I'm not gonna apply, well, I don't know, I may apply diamonds to it just to kind of map out where I'm gonna put my flowers at, but you know what, yeah, let me do diamonds, because you know what, might as well do that. So just a second, let me do that and then I'll be right back. Okay guys, so I got the diamonds added to my swatch sticks, and I just chose 3 random colors to do the flowers in. And as you can see, I kind of did something different with the stones with each one of them, because once again, this one is going to have 2, maybe 3 little SpongeBob flowers. This one is going to be like the half fancy flower and then the whole fancy flower. And of course, I do have my little dapping dish of monomer on the side. So first things first, let me go ahead and open. No, I'm gonna do this new one first, and I'm gonna use this purple white. It's actually a white that glows in the dark purple from not polish. Which is odd. I guess I have 2 of them because this one still has a seal on it. And I know for a fact I've used this a couple of times. So I guess I have 2 of them and didn't know. Alright, so in my little jar of monomer. Okay, so first things first, you guys, is of course picking up the bead to start your first petal off. You of course want to make sure that, you know what I'm trying to say, it really is kind of like an eyeballing thing as to like how big your petal, how big of a bead you're going to be getting to make the size of the petal you want. But you do kind of have to kind of, you know, make an educated eyeball, if that makes sense. But of course you don't want your bead to be runny, and you definitely of course don't want it to be too dry. If you make it too dry, of course, then you're gonna probably have a hard time getting it to form like that perfect pearl at first, and then being able to just flatten it out and shape it. Versus if you have it at a perfect consistency, it'll just it'll come onto your brush as that perfect like bead, like rounded out. What I tend to do, because I used to have problems with applying too much monomer into my brush, and then I'll sit it on there, and then of course it'll just spread and go everywhere, and then of course it was a disaster. So what I actually started doing is dipping my brush, one second guys, is dipping my brush into the monomer, right, and then swiping a little bit twice, but still having enough liquid on my brush, dapping it, You see, guys, like, let me see. If you can see this is like a perfect consistency. It's not too dry and it's not too loose, right? So what I'll do is I'll hold it on my brush for a few seconds. That way it kind of gets a chance to like solidify just a little bit or dry out a little bit. And then I'll sit it down. And see, that bead actually may have been a little bit too dry because as you can see, it didn't really want to come off of my brush, but it wasn't too dry. Because as you can see, it's still a wet pearl. And then once again, I wait a couple of seconds. And then I take the flat part of my brush, or sometimes honestly the corner, like the side, and I'll smush it out. Really more so putting all of my pressure on the bottom of the brush. And then you take your brush and you pull the top out to kind of give it that point that everyone usually does. And you pretty much just kind of have to keep shaping it. Of course, dapping your brush and your monomer to clean your brush, coming back to it, shaping it. Until you have it exactly how you want it. And that's pretty good for the first petal, right? So, and honestly, this may be a little too small for this size diamond. I've never used this size diamond, but I may need to go up like a size 6 if I'm going to be using such a big diamond to do the flower. But it's okay, because once again, this is basically just a tutorial video to show you guys how to actually do the petals, not about the diamond. So going in, of course, for my little side beads, in which my side beads, I'm not gonna point them out like I did the end. You know, actually, let me go ahead and do my end, my next end button. Oh. Let me go ahead and do my next end button. Excuse me, end petal. Dap, dap, right? Waiting a few seconds, giving it some time to dry a little bit so that I don't just sit it down and it spreads out all over the nail. Then I go ahead and sit it down. Wait a few more seconds. So once again, let it dry out a little bit. Then go in with my brush. Once again, applying pressure more so towards the bottom of the petal. And don't forget, of course, to continue to clean your brush just like you would when you're doing nails. All right, and then my side. Petals. And honestly, you basically just do the same thing with each petal, guys. You just, in the middle or for the side petals, you just don't point it out at the end, which is pretty much easier than trying to point it out. As you can see, like, sometimes you can have a little difficulty, but basically you just sit your bead kind of close to your edge. And if you're a little more advanced, you can actually do 2 of your side petals at a time. I'm not that advanced, but I'll give it a try. And you just press it out. Tuck in the bottom down there because it did spread a little bit. All right. And then your middle bead. Now sometimes, guys, if you do pick up a bead and you realize that you did have too much monomer on your brush, you can always, of course, dap it on a napkin. Dap the back of the brush on a napkin, and it'll kind of drain a little bit of that monomer from the bead. Which I should have done with that bead because it definitely ran a little bit, but honestly it was kind of hard to see because of the way I have my phone set up to record. So I didn't realize it was a little runny until I sat it down, but it's okay. So once again, if you get a runny bead, just dap the back of the brush on a napkin and it'll basically drain some of that monomer out of the bead and you should be fine. Once again, I set it down, giving it a few more moments to kind of dry out so it'll be easier to flatten and shape. And you definitely don't have to use too much pressure. Don't have to use too much pressure at all. So I'm just gonna turn it around to do the other side. That bead may be a little too dry, which is fine. I'll just discard of that one, shape out this one, and then pick up another bead for my next petal. Once again, light pressure. Next bead, You know what, actually I feel like this needs, there we go. Need one more little crease on the side. I try to do like 2 creases on the side of the petal. Or sometimes one just straight through, but since I had one going on that side, I decided to just do one on that side as well. But sitting this down, I'm gonna give it a few seconds to dry out. Once again, I take the side of my brush first because it gives me that first crease down the middle that I want. If you don't care for the creases, then you just use the flat side of the brush. I just like to put the creases in. And then my very last middle petal. This bead is a little wet, so I'm gonna just tap it on my napkin really quickly. Give it a few seconds. And then sit it down. Give it a few more seconds to dry out, just a little bit. Okay, and there you guys have it. That's my little fancy flower. That's the whole fancy flower. Now, I'm gonna be honest, guys, I'm not the best with tutorials, only because I don't be knowing how to explain this stuff. Like, if you can tell, I just on a whim try to explain it as best as I possibly can. I know it's not going to resonate to everyone the way I'm trying to explain it, but I'm just hoping that you guys can catch on from like what you see me doing if you're not basically completely understanding how I'm trying to explain the process. But they resemble it. I feel like they resemble SpongeBob flowers, so that's just why I call it that. But honestly, it's the same process. Picking up your bead, checking to see if it might be a little too wet, dap it on your napkin if it is, waiting a couple seconds, and then sitting it down on the nail. And honestly, these ones are gonna basically look just like the side petals that I did on the fancy flower. As you can see, that bead was still a little bit too wet because it is spreading. However, that is once again okay, as long as it doesn't spread entirely too much. And sometimes if you feel like the bottom of the petal has spread it too much, I just kind of tuck it in a little. Okay, next petal. I can definitely tell it might be a little too wet because it did fill up with the liquid too fast. So I'm gonna dap it on my napkin with a couple of seconds. And then place it down. For the next petal. Wait a couple of seconds for it to dry out a little bit. And of course, turn it as much as you need to turn it. I mean, when I do client nails, of course, I can't just 360 or 180 turn their hand, but and so guys, I'm just fast forwarding through the rest of this flower, only because of course so far you've seen me do it twice, really more than twice, because technically this is the same technique that I used to do the fancy flower. So yeah, I'm just gonna fast forward through the rest of this flower so that I can go ahead and move on to the half flower. So now, if you're using a smaller brush, you of course will be able to fit like 5 petals on there. I do like it when I do the 5 petals, but the size of the diamond that I used and the size of the brush I'm using, of course, I'm like, okay, more than likely I'm gonna only be able to do like 4 petals with this. And then of course, for my little side flower, I'm just gonna use Mambasita. It's like a purple, and this also from Not Polished. So once again, same process. Pick up your bead. Actually, I might need a bigger bead than that. And of course, picking up a bead, like determining the size, of course, also falls into how many times you dap your brush into the powder, the acrylic. The same way, of course, when you're doing nails and you're laying the acrylic, you know if you pick or dap your brush into the liquid and you leave more of the liquid in and you dap it into the powder more, that's the bigger bead you're picking up. So you want to definitely drain enough of the liquid out, and depending on the size of the bead you're trying to go for. Small, of course, dap it in there once, medium twice, large 3 times. I'm gonna go for slightly large for this one, so I'm gonna do 3. 1, 2, 3. Right, and so that's my bead. That's considered big in the 3D flowers, for 3D flowers to me. My bead did fill up pretty quickly with liquid, so I know it's wet, too wet. So I'm gonna dap it on my napkin to drain some of that liquid. And I just dapped it for like literally 2 seconds, like 1, 2, and then picked it back up. But yes, wait a few seconds for it to dry out a little bit. So once again, guys, just speeding the video up a bit for this part, just because this is the same technique, of course, that I used for the first and second flower. Only difference between this flower and the first flower I did is, of course, this is just the half flower, so we're not doing as many petals. But yeah, so this, just fast forwarding so you guys can just watch me work. Not sure if purple or this deep of a purple was good to use on the black nail, because I can tell it might be a little hard for some people to see, but yes, so I'm just gonna go ahead and let you guys continue to watch me complete this half flower. And there you guys have it. That is my half flower, which once again was the same process as this one, just didn't have to do that many petals. We just set it on the side of the nail. So those are my 3 flowers, you guys. I think I'm gonna go ahead and fill all of these ones up before I take the photo for my thumbnail. But yeah, there you have it, you guys.